Hello and welcome to the second podcast of the year and the second on the channel. This is the first ever episode on the Plums and Peaches playlist, which covers all the cricketing stuff that happened globally and the headlines and stories. And if you haven't already, head over to the channel and check out yesterday's Dibbly Dobbler's debut video, where a review of England's 2023 took place, as well as a preview of 2024 and much, much more. All the podcasts will be available on YouTube and Spotify on the Huzaifa and Lucas channel. So today we are joined by a French, South African, English enthusiast, Lucas Smith. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, that's about it. I wouldn't, yeah.
Am I missing any nationalities, or is that all we've got?
Wow. I mean, yeah, that's about it, really, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah, I
Any
get a
more?
decent spread there.
Yeah,
I'm unfortunately not going to be covering a lot of the French cricket today, but
no, but we all have a soft spot for Gustave Maquillon.
Oh, of course you do. He doesn't follow him on Instagram. He's an absolute gem.
Of course he is. So, do you want to tell the listeners what we have in store today?
Yeah, so starting off, we got a recap of the South Africa-India Boxing Day test. Any particular thing you want to start off with regards to that?
I'll probably start off with I'll just wait. Let me go through the rest of these. So obviously,
do you want me to list that? Okay.
Yeah, I can do it now if you want. Anyways,
okay, go on.
Got South Africa, India, Australia, Pakistan, a couple of other international news, the Big Bash mid-season update, Test performance of the year, the Test team of the year, the Test player of the year, the ODI performance of the year, ODI team of the year, and ODI player of the year. The same three for T20s, moment of the year, breakthrough player of the year, the biggest drop off, the young player of the year, and the 2024 breakthrough shout. Quite a bit, but hopefully you're still with us by the end. Well, all right. South Africa, India. The first innings, Keju Rabada, fifer, 3 for Berger. India limited to 245, despite KL Rahul getting 101.
Well, look, I mean, just to start off, KL Rahul's innings was just faultless, really. On a tough pitch, ball nipping around, even in the 80th over, just before the new ball was taken, it was still doing plenty. And just absolutely faultless, no chances or anything. And like you said, just really pulled India out of the mud. When they could have been 38 for 5 with the drops of Kohli and Iyer, but they recovered nicely in that sort of second hour before lunch, and then Rabada just does what he does best, really, and just ran through them.
He's quality, yeah. I almost forgot about the Janssen. There's a Janssen drop at point, and then there was, I can't remember the other
one. At square leg, forward square leg. Which actually I think we should probably speak about South Africa's fielding. Despite the demolishing, really, of India, there were, I think, 5 drops, 2 in the first innings and 3 in the second, if I'm not mistaken. And on another day, you don't want to be dropping Kohli or I or any of that India top 6, really, when there are not many. And it could have been a different story on another day, but South Africa managed to get away with it in the end. But yeah.
So what you're trying to say is it could have been an innings and 200 runs instead of an innings and 40.
Wow. Oh, look, obviously, South Africa will be immensely happy with that. But like I said, on another day, Kohli gets dropped on 4 and goes and bangs at 150. He's done it there before, so
He has. And moving on to the second innings, Dean Elgar made 185 and 50s from David Bedingham and Marco Jansen helped South Africa get 408 on a pitch where I thought 250 was quite a lot when India got their score.
Well, I mean, you certainly felt it when India got to 245 that they probably did get a few more than South Africa would have wanted. And then obviously the early wicket of Markram, you just don't want that. from a South African perspective, and it was a perfect start for India. And apart from Bumrah, they just couldn't find the right area consistently enough. They were just a little bit wayward, and at the end of the day, South Africa capitalized on it, rather to my surprise, given the batting performances over the past year or so.
Yeah, it was weird because I remember before the test match, I was looking at a Safa bowling lineup and going, they will definitely get 20 wickets in the test match. It will be similar to last time where it will be 250 plays, 260 or whatever. But I was seriously thinking, where are South Africa going to get their runs from? And I didn't think Dean Elgar was going to become the reincarnation of prime Lara with the amount of cover drives and straight drives, and he even hooked a couple and like
Proper calypso cricket, that.
I know I've never seen him bat that aggressively.
Oh, I think, well, we can get on to the debutants, but I think that was definitely a factor. I think you could see the way South Africa tried to impose himself on Prasidh Krishna, who's obviously a quality operator. Like his first class stats was showed as he came on the bowl. He's taken 50 wickets in 13 games, 17 apiece, which, you know, on Indian dust bowls isn't too shabby.
Yeah.
And he couldn't quite nail down an accurate spot, which is what you needed on that pitch. Where if you did hit the right areas consistently enough, you get the rewards. And India just couldn't quite do that, apart from Bumrah, who, as I said, was just on a different level to the rest.
The pitch obviously was quite green and bouncy, but the fact that Safa's got 408, there can't be too many complaints. And I think the real reason they got that many was Siraj isn't really known for holding a line and length all day. He's a very, I don't know how to put it, when he gets on a roll, he gets wickets for fun, as you saw in the World Cup a couple of times. And I think it was the Asia Cup final against Sri Lanka, we just got like 6 and like 20, 30 balls or whatever. But I think the fact they were missing Shami meant that although Bumrah holding up an end and bowling excellent areas, no Shami at the other end just meant they couldn't replicate in. Shardul Thakur had like a very off day. I've never seen him bowl down the leg side that much. I don't know if he was trying to glove everyone out, but literally every ball he bowled was down leg, which, I mean, it's a bit weird, but sometimes that works in South Africa.
Yeah, well, we saw that in this game, actually. Shubman Gill gloving one down the leg side. And historically, and actually, well, Dean Elgar as well, if you think about it.
He punches everything down the leg side, doesn't he?
Yeah, he loves a little bit of a jab there.
Yeah.
But I mean, like you said, I think Mohammad Shami would have been a massive bonus for India had they had him in this game, because, like we were saying, if you could hit that just sort of full of a length kind of area just outside off, which is often the case really whenever you're playing Test cricket, but more so on this pitch, which had been undercover for 2 days, you know, that would have certainly helped. Whether it would have swung the balance in India's favour, we'll never know that, but he definitely would have helped to have him.
Yeah, that's pretty true. And as we were on Elgar, he was actually captaining on the field for most of the test match. And I think Markram had to open because I'm not sure if Bavuma opens anymore, but talking about the white ball skipper and the normal skipper, Temba, what happened to him in the first innings? Did he pull his hammy or?
So there was actually quite a lot of there wasn't a lot of clear communication when it came to that. He sort of pulled up chasing a ball in the outfield at full pace, which told you that he probably wasn't actually carrying like a little injury or anything, and he felt fine. But as it is with hammies, you know, you really need to test them out before you go on and play a test match against India. But yeah, so he's out of the second test, which I don't think is much of a surprise really. He didn't bat in South Africa's innings. And look, he's had hamstring problems in the past, and I just think to make sure he can make a full recovery, he just needs to sit the next game out, which definitely makes sense.
India, in their second innings, despite being behind by almost 150, They're actually relatively okay, which sounds weird, but they were 96 for 4. Rahul was in first inning centurion. Then they got bowled out for 131. Berger got 3, Janssen got 4, and South Africa romped to an innings and 32-run win.
Yeah. That spell from Berger when Rahul and Kohli were just starting to get a partnership going just turned the game. I think he picked up 2 wickets in his comeback over. Picked up Jaiswal at the start of the innings and then came back and just seems to have beautiful rhythm. He single-handedly, obviously 96 for 4 is not an ideal position to be in as a batting side, but it was a decent enough recovery, and you've got arguably, without a doubt, one of the greatest batsmen that's ever played the game, and a batsman who's in form and who's batted very well at that ground many times. Just to get that breakthrough at that point just completely broke the spine of India, I think.
Just before we get to Berger and a couple of the other bowlers, I'll have a bit more on Elgar. Elgar is now, he's got the 4th most test runs as a South African opener, behind Graham Smith, Gary Kirsten, and Herschel Gibbs. He now averages just under 50 at home, but away from home, he averages 25. Do you know why that's interesting?
Go on.
Because South African pitchers have the lowest seam bowling average and the lowest overall bowling average in any country since South Africa came back to international cricket in 1992.
Well, the second part of that doesn't surprise me at all, given just what we saw in that last Test match. But I mean, you certainly do wonder, because I mean, certainly in the last tour to England, for example, Elgar really did struggle against the moving ball. And obviously, look, you got 2 quality operators in Stuart Broad and Jim Janssen, 2 of the best to ever do it, especially in England. But yeah, I think India just lacked. Obviously, Elgar's been a fantastic servant of South African cricket, and the fact that, bluntly, I was quite surprised that he averaged almost 50 at home. But yeah, it just shows if you can have a little bit of determination. South African pitches are known for being spicy and having a little bit of nip in them. But if you can, I mean, it's like we saw in this game. If you just keep your discipline and are prepared to put the hard yards in, like Elgar and Rahul were, and Janssen, who I thought played a really, really important innings, you can score runs. And I think that was pretty clear throughout the Test match. And it goes to show why Elgar has been so successful in South Africa. Just a very gritty player, and always there to get across the line.
I think it was more than just grit, because if you saw KL Rahul's innings, obviously on the first day, I saw it must have been in Sky Sports. They put a box just outside off stump on the beehive or the hit map, whatever it's called, and basically any ball inside that you didn't score off. But the moment they went outside that, as you know, in Centurion or the Highveld or whatever that place is called in South Africa, the ball just flies.
Yeah.
So anything outside that zone, just around 4th, 5th stump, he basically put his hands through it, which is similar to, obviously, Elgar, not exactly the same, but a similar philosophy where anything outside that box, he made sure he scored off. Same with Janssen being 12'9". They just made sure that everything outside there went. And you've got to put some sort of pressure back on, because as we'll get on to, bowlers like Rabada, who are like a crazy strike rate, they'll just eat you up eventually if you're not scoring off some sort of deliveries.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you hit the point home there. But I mean, like you said, in the Highveld, whenever you're playing at the Wanderers or Centurion, the ball does tend to fly just from the altitude. And that was certainly part of in particular KL Rahul's game, who's more known for his white ball skills to really get after. And he showed that if you did apply yourself, you could score runs. And let's be perfectly honest, apart from if Rabada hadn't been playing South Africa weren't exactly hitting their straps the whole time, especially in the first innings.
That's very true. Talking about KG, I know the pitches are spicy and whatnot in South Africa, but it doesn't undermine the fact that Rabada has the best strike rate in Test history.
Look, he's just unbelievable.
I think he's like 20, 40, just under 40.
Yeah, so I think 39.3 or 4.
The next closest is like almost a run more.
Yeah. I think that would be Waqar Younis, no?
Yeah. Do you know his record against India now?
Oh,
KG.
Yeah, I think he's taken 50 wickets. He's gone past
51 wickets, the 5th most, and his average is 21. Pretty nuts.
I mean, he constantly just finds a way to take wickets, and I feel like he doesn't necessarily get the plaudits of a Cummins or an Anderson or whatnot. Obviously, all quality operators, but I feel like he's not necessarily mentioned all the time as being one of the best bowlers in the world, but he's certainly up there, and he's just proved it again.
I think a big reason for that, as we'll get on to, is how little South Africa take Test cricket seriously, or by the looks of it, they don't really play a lot of it, and they don't plan on playing a lot of it. But it's not just at home. He has the best average and best strike rate of any bowler that's got 150 home Test wickets. So he's comfortably clear of anyone else who's bowled at home.
Yeah, and you think of all the bowlers, all the great South African bowlers. You think of Steyn, who's also got, I think, one of the best strike rates there's ever been. Donald, your Pollocks, your Mackay and Teenys. You know, that's no mean feat. Rabada's a serious bowler. And it's such a shame that South Africa, like you said, aren't taking Test cricket as seriously anymore, and are kind of deferring down the white ball route. Because, I mean, it's I think cricket as a whole is worse off for not having South Africa play more Test cricket.
Oh yeah, sure. The amount of talent that South Africa have, but not seeing it on a Test stage is pretty devastating at times. But talking about those other names you mentioned, obviously Dale Steyn, Pollock, Alan Donald, and Morne Morkel. Surely Rabada's in that top 5, right? It's got to be, surely.
It's funny you mentioned that. I've been having a little bit of a debate recently with, I believe, your other guests on the show, about who would make a South African all-time bowling attack, and I think he probably does get in there now. I think
surely
he's taken 287 wickets, average of just over 22. Strike rate would blow anyone else that was out of the water, like you said. I just think he's got to be in there now. He's a quality operator.
And it's not just his home. Obviously, at home he's basically unplayable, but even away from home, I think his average is like early 30s, and his strike rate's not that terrible either. It's around just past 50 or something. Even if he never played a home Test match, he'd still be a world-class bowler, just going off his away record, even that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, he's not, obviously, I think he's got something like 11 of his 14 or 15 fifers have come in South Africa, and all his 410 wicket hauls have also been in South Africa. But you look at, especially in the last few years, where South Africa's batting has been lacking quite a lot, and he's always there in amongst the wickets, keeping us along with the rest of the bowling attack, really, especially guys like Nokia and Ngidi as well, and Jansen just recently in the last year or so. They're the ones who've really been keeping South Africa in games, with the batting not firing at all, really. So yeah.
Talking about those lot, so that's now what Rabada, Nokia, Ngidi, Kudzir, Jansen, and Berger. So that's a very scary, fiery attack. All of them are 6 foot plus, and all of them bowl at hitting 90 miles an hour. So at full strength, who is your starting 4/5 if you want to play Jansen as an all-rounder?
Oh, that, do you know why? Yeah, at home, no
At full
doubt,
fitness.
you're playing all five. I think.
Yeah,
Also, oh, sorry, you're playing Rabada. You've got to have Norkia in there. I
yeah,
think his pace just is devastating. And then you're looking at Janssen. I think he's just got to be in there. I mean, he showed his batting abilities
yeah,
as well. And then you probably you want Ngidi in there just as
you
your
do.
bowler can kind of control things and go tick along at 2 and over.
Hmm.
And then yeah, it's a real toss up. I think if you're playing in South Africa, you want to play as many pace bowlers as you can.
See, I'm not sure about that. What I think is looking at our bowling attack, even as proved in this game, just four of them are good enough to take 20 wickets for not many runs. So wouldn't you want the extra batter instead of playing Janssen as an all-rounder at 7?
Potentially, but like I said, having those bowlers that I've selected, it allows you, depending on where you're playing, of course. In South
Yeah.
Africa, where the pitches are or tend to be a little bit more spicy, you probably would play an extra batsman. But then looking elsewhere, I think someone who's criminally underrated, really, and who doesn't necessarily get the plaudits is Keshav Maharaj.
He does. Not he needs
And
to, yeah.
obviously, he doesn't play a lot at home.
Mhm.
But whenever we go away from home, and even in this recent World Cup, he really started to get his flowers and was able to display his qualities.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think he certainly deserves a place in that South African team. Not
Talking
least
about,
because he can also bat a little bit as well.
yeah, more than a
Which,
little bit, as proven
yeah,
recently.
yeah.
Can hit a long ball and he can do a bit of. I think this was the first time I saw him do like a proper. So at the World Cup, he was just obviously slogging at the end. He can clearly hit the ball well, and as shown in the SA20, it's the first innings I've seen him do like a proper, like, where there was different modes. He just kind of dug in a bit at the beginning, and then when he got to the tail, he launched a bit. So it's good to see he's got both sides to it instead of just one long lever. Really,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think players like that for South Africa, unless like you said, you're playing the extra batter,
Mhm.
which you probably will be, or certainly would have been in the last few years with the lack of batting depth, I guess.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Certainly very useful runs down the order. But yeah, no.
Yeah, talking about one of those pacers, another left arm pacer who's not as tall but still pretty tall and pretty fast. Nandre Berger, 28 years
Good
old.
pronunciation there as well. I
Yeah,
think.
I've been practicing.
Yeah.
I've been watching Tony DeZorzi's TikTok, so that helps. You got 7 for 83 on debut, Berger. What do you make of
Yeah.
him? I'm kind of actually thinking about. I'm kind of surprised because someone in England who bowls anywhere close to 90 miles an hour would have been fast tracked at the age of 21. Let alone if they bowl left arm pace. So, do you have any idea why it's taken him this long?
Well, I mean, you look at his first class record, and he averages, I think, 28, which isn't obviously
It's right.
isn't bad. It's pretty good, but
Yeah,
you just look at the quality of bowlers that South Africa
yeah.
keeps producing year in, year out, averaging low 20s, maybe mid 20s, and I feel that's possibly what's pushed him aside. I think obviously the one proper attribute that he's got is his ability to swing the ball at pace.
Yeah.
We saw that
You saw him a
especially
couple
in
of second slip.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And he's just a very his action's nice. He hits the crease with a lot of energy, and yeah, I was really impressed. I think, like I mentioned, because the only reason I can think he's been cast aside to a certain extent is because of the ridiculous depth that South Africa
Yeah.
does have in the bowling department.
Slightly unfortunate, but I think
Yeah,
with a bit more accuracy and a bit more, finding his length, which he will do eventually as he gets used to it. He'll be a real deal to handle. And I think he's had a great 3 months or 3 weeks even. He's got an IPL contract and he's made all 3 debuts for South Africa.
yeah,
So he's
I
done all right
mean,
there.
yeah, he certainly from what I've seen of it, he certainly deserves it. And I'm glad to see him get the opportunity at the international level. Yeah.
And talking about another newish sort of player who isn't that new, because us lot in England would have heard a lot of him. David Bedingham. He's gone back to South Africa and he got a 50, hooking everything onto the grass banks. He looked pretty solid, even through the offside, through the onside. I looked at him. Doesn't look like there's much that could go wrong. Fingers crossed.
No, well, he certainly looked very compact, and you'd expect that from someone who's played in England for so long. I believe he played for Durham.
He did for a long time.
Quite a while.
He got a lot of runs as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he averages what, just a shade under 50.
I think over 50 possibly now. I'm not sure, but around 50. Yeah.
Yeah.
Championship.
I mean, certainly a very, very healthy average, and very, very. He's quite tall as well. He uses that to his advantage, and I think quite some of the strokes that he played were quite dismissive. I mean, obviously the 2 sixes he hit, but a couple of the drives he played were pretty good.
It was a bit like Zach Crawley.
Yeah.
The tall on the up driving with the Granix back.
Yeah. I mean, he stands quite tall in his stance.
Does. Which is also a bit of a downfall, because as you saw with his dismissal, he doesn't really get a big stride into the ball. Kind of just lets it come.
Yeah.
So if you can just push a couple through on the stumps, I guess that's all right. But with the amount of bounce in South Africa, it's not really a worry you have too often, is it?
No, I mean, you need to be bowling pretty much half volley length if you want to get anything to hit the stumps in South Africa. But no, it's certainly a good point, and I'm obviously we don't know why he got out like that, but potentially just a slight loss in concentration. I think he played an on drive a few overs before that, or maybe a clip through mid wicket, and he looked fine playing that, and then potentially just a little bit of complacency and lack of concentration brought that about. But no, you're right. The fact that he is so tall in his stance will have an effect on that.
Yeah, and just on Bedingham and the way he's obviously no more coal packs. Now that Brexit has happened, there's no more coal packs. And do you think more Saffers will choose to play for South Africa now, like Simon Harmer has done and Bedingham has done recently? Or do you think they'll just find some other franchise T20 or the United States to disappear to?
Well, look, I think it completely depends on the individual. And obviously, the people who have already gone across and who are slightly older, you're looking at a Carl Abbott or someone like that.
Yeah.
Will probably favour the T20 leagues or like the Major League Cricket in the US, purely because, one, they've already played for South Africa, but two, they probably feel like even if they did go back and try and make a run for the national team, they wouldn't be there for very long anyways, because of getting to an age where they potentially consider retiring. But then, I mean, certainly younger players will consider it. Yeah. Will definitely consider it, I'm sure.
Possibly.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's, as we've seen over the years, really, there's been a lot of South Africans playing for England and other countries as well. You look at
even Namibia nowadays.
Yeah, David Visa. I don't know. It's quite an interesting one. It's hard to tell, really. But I definitely think. Yeah, I definitely think.
On the topic of, like, obviously Test cricket, this World Test Championship, I'm sure you've seen the fixture list. 2025, South Africa have very favourable home draws. 3 Asian sides. They're already 1-0 up against India. We've got Sri Lanka and Pakistan next, who they should be beating. And then away tours, they've got Bangladesh, West Indies, and New Zealand. And now the real one is New Zealand away, as I'm sure you're going to tell us about some of the squad selections. And a certain man called Neil Brand is the captain. So I believe it is because most of the SAFA main players, almost all of them, are going to be in the SAT20. So they'll be taking a B or even C team over to New Zealand, which in the long run, by the looks of it, it could cost them a space in the Test Championship final a couple of summers' time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the biggest concern for me is you look at the squads, you look at the likes of uh, Dane Pete or Dane Patterson, who both kind of
All right, cricket
fairly experienced and fairly or on the older side. And obviously, you need whenever you go away from home, especially, you do need that experience. But you really like to see some of the youngsters coming through. Obviously, there are a couple in there. You're looking at Reynard van Tonda and Runda Swart, but even they're not particularly young. And it's a real shame to see South Africa be going down that route. You look at the likes of the box office players like a Rabada or even the younger players. You look at Tristan Stubbs, who's been included in this squad, and who I love to see get a run out in the second game. It's a real shame that they've decided to go down that route and effectively pick a South Africa A team.
It's just, I think they've shown the sacrifice that they've realised or wanted to just put their franchise cricket ahead because, I don't know, money or finances or whatever it is. But I'm not seeing South Africa put out their best side for a test match by choice is quite upsetting. But luckily for us, there's a second team in this match, India. They haven't won a test series in South Africa since 1992, or I don't think they've ever won one.
They've not won in South Africa.
9 series since 92.
Or definitely not since readmission, like you said.
Yeah, definitely not. And obviously Michael Vaughan on the Pakistan-Australia commentary slated into them, going that they're one of the biggest underachieving sports teams, which is slightly harsh, but I can see where he's coming from.
Well, I might offend some of the Indian following, but I don't. Obviously, India has over the years such a big country, such a wonderful first class and domestic system. You certainly
T20, everything absolutely.
Really. You certainly, obviously, they do very well in. I think they've won pretty much everywhere in the world. They just can't seem to get their hands on an elusive ICC trophy. Really,
it's been 10 years now, isn't it?
Yeah, since since the home one.
Which is weird because in those last 10 years, they've probably been comfortably the most well-rounded, best cricket team in the world. Obviously, Australia are just Australia, but regularly and consistently, they've probably been the best team going around.
Yeah.
But talking more about their struggles in South Africa specifically, Rohit Sharma, who is their all-format skipper nowadays, hasn't really got his grips on this place yet like he has in Australia or even England. He's got 128 runs at an average of 12 and 5 innings. And his white ball opener at the World Cup, Shubman Gill, he's got... So hear this. In his first series in Australia, I think, he got 259 runs at an average of 51 in 6 innings. But since then, he's only got 735 runs at an average of 27 in 29 innings. So do you think that a few more innings where he doesn't get some runs in red ball and almost half replicates his white ball form, do you think his selection's under threat up there?
It's an interesting one, 100%. But I feel there's no way you can possibly drop Shubman Gill, especially for the moment. I mean, you can see the amount of talent he has. And look, every great player has struggled at some point in their Test career. You do have lows and highs, but I certainly think there's a lot to work with there, and he can. Obviously, his white ball prowess is clear for everyone to see. You look at his white ball record in ODI cricket. I think he averages above 60, or maybe it's just dipped below that now. But I mean, he's a fantastic player, and I can't see them thinking of dropping him for the foreseeable future anyway. So.
Agreed. I think just before we go on to the good stuff from India, they even got docked another 2 points, adding salt to the wounds for slow over rate.
Yeah.
So I know nowadays, basically, 90 overs is a joke. It never gets completed in a day of Test cricket. Even if you add it's not even optional. It's basically mandatory extra half hour now.
Mm.
Do you think a stop clock would work like they've trialled in the T20s? Do you think it would work for Test cricket?
I mean, I'd certainly be willing to give it a try because it's really, really poor. The amount of overs
especially
lost.
going to the ground.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got to think about it at the end of the day. Obviously, you have to take like weather conditions and everything else into it. Obviously, if it's pouring down with rain, you can't play.
Yeah, obviously
that's understandable. But when you do get the chance to play,
between overs, you
need to rattle through and get the overs back in as quickly as you can. And yeah, it is a real shame. If it was the case that the teams did really try and get through the overs once there had been a delay, I think there would be less of emphasis on it. But I just feel like with the amount of delays, with whether it be bad light or rain, or even like we saw in this Test match, the game getting delayed for half an hour because of a wet pitch. It's not what we want as
but on the bright side for India, there was one major batting performance that stood out and a second one from Kohli in the second innings. But starting on KL Rahul's brilliant first innings ton, he's probably been India's most consistent red ball batsman away from home because he's got 7 out of his 8 Test hundreds have all been away from home, including ones in Jamaica, Sydney. He's got 1 each at both the London grounds, and his last 2 have both been at Centurion on spicy wickets. And he's also had a really good year where he's very much stood up for India in tough moments at the World Cup and other series as well. So surely it's about time that the tag of KL Rahul doesn't perform under pressure. Surely that's banished by now. It's a myth, right?
I mean, certainly you can see that he's stood up in key moments. You look at I believe in the World Cup final, he scored important runs in that partnership with Kohli. Obviously, it was in vain in the end, but certainly a valuable contribution. And then, like you said, 7 of his 8 Test hundreds away from home says it all. Really, you don't need to look too far past that. Going away from home, especially as an Indian team who is so dominant at home.
Yeah.
You need your players to step up away from home when you're going to the likes of England and South Africa, where it is tricky to bat. And he's done that on multiple occasions.
I think KL Rahul is like, his utility is unbelievable because to be able to keep in a Test match, as well as you can basically bat anywhere from number 1 to 6. I think his last Centurion 100 was opening, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Having a batsman who can bat anywhere in the top 6 and keep shows how good he must be technically and mentally to score all those runs away from home in all these different conditions. West Indies, England, Colombo, South Africa, basically anywhere. But hopefully India are gonna, and I hope there's a lot more of that in the second Test from a few of their other batsmen to really level the series. That's all they can do now. But looking on to that second Test, no Bavuma at the top of the order. Elgar's going to be skippering in his final Test. Who do you think will replace Temba?
Well, I think after winning the first Test, I think there is going to be quite a big shake-up. I'd certainly like there to be. I'd like Tristan Stubbs to make his debut.
Oh, where do you fit him though? In the middle order, and then Mark.
Yes, So we played the extra batsman in this Test, and I mean, fingers crossed it works out again, but it did work out quite well. I'd just shuffle everyone down 1 and put Stubbs in the middle order.
Well, technically, you didn't have the extra batsman because Bavuma didn't play, basically.
Exactly. So, I reckon my batting lineup would be Elgar and Markram at the top, obviously. Then Dazorzi at 3. You're looking at Peterson at 4, Bellingham 5. Stubbs fits in at 6, and then Varane at 7, and then I don't believe there's a particularly like strong depth in terms of other bowlers in the squad. So there could end up not being many changes in the end.
Well, there's going to have to be one because Kutzir's injured.
Yeah, could see it. Yeah,
so who comes in?
Well, you're looking at potentially Ngidi if he's fit.
Mm-hmm.
I think they said he would be in contention for the second test. And then there's not really potentially Mulder potentially, but
even Maharaj if it might turn possibly.
It does turn at the Wanderers, but it is.
It's at Cape Town, I believe. I think.
Say again.
I think the second test is in Cape Town.
Oh yes, it is. You're right. Yeah, sorry. It does. Yeah. Well, even at Cape Town, it does tend to spin a little bit. Mm-hmm. Obviously, quite a big ground as well, Newlands.
Yeah.
So I think potentially Maharaj could come in for a Coutinho or something. But I can definitely see quite a few changes being brought in.
Yeah. But either way, you're pretty confident, right? 2-0 South Africa favourites at Cape Town.
Well, I think favourites is probably correct, but I mean
marginal.
You certainly don't want to write off India, especially after such a big hammering. Really, I mean.
They'll definitely.
I don't particularly think they'll make too many changes. They could potentially bring in Mukesh Kumar, who's looked all right in the white ball series. But I can't see them. I think they'll stick with the same 11. I think it will be tighter, but I think South Africa will get.
I certainly hope so. But yeah, now we're on to the other Boxing Day test, Pakistan, Australia. I'll get through the match summary quickly, just for those who haven't got onto anything. Australia batted first. They got 318, minus 50, 40s Khawaja and Mitch Marsh. But to start off the day for Pakistan, Abdullah Shafiq at first slip dropped an absolute sitter when Shaheen Afridi found Warner's outside edge in the 4th over. It was one of those where it comes so slowly and you go into like a long barrier position. Just went straight out. And Australia's second top scorer after Labuschagne getting 50 was extras, 52.
Yeah.
Not very good. Then Pakistan's innings, Abdullah Shafiq and Masood got 50s, Rizwan 40 and Pakistan got 264, which coincidentally was almost 50 less than what Australia got. And then to start the third innings, it got really spicy because Pakistan's left arm seamers Shaheen and Mir Hamza got 2 each, as Australia was 16 for 4. But then the match probably changed just in one ball. Abdullah Shafiq again at first slip had one about waist high. I can't remember who was bowling. I think it was Ahmed Jamal.
Yeah.
Which Marsh was on 20. He had a wild hack at one. An absolute clanger gone down. The rebound wasn't caught either. Mitch Marsh adds another 76. He gets 96. And then finally Pakistan take a half-decent catch, a one-handed low down second slip from Salman, yeah. Marsh just falls short of his 4th test ton. But then 50s from Smith and Carey's first 50 in 6 test matches since the one at Birmingham, I think, in the first Ashes test.
Yeah.
Meant the Aussies got 262 and Pakistan were chasing 316. But despite 50s from Shan Masood and Agha Salman, Pakistan fell well short by 79 runs in the end. Their last 5 wickets fell in 40 balls, and now they've lost 16 consecutive test matches in Australia.
Yeah.
Do you know what was the last time Pakistan won a test there?
I believe it was mid-90s, but I can't be.
Yeah. Sydney 1995. Here's some of these names playing. 3 current commentators were playing: Ramiz Raja, Wasim and Waqar. And 3 coaches: Saqlain Mushtaq Ahmed and Inzamam al-Haq. So I've got a quote here somewhere. So when Shafiq dropped Mitch Marsh, that cost them 76 runs. And it cost the extra 52 in extras. So that's almost 128 runs in the match, which is quite a lot. And obviously, Shan Masood echoed that when he came out and said, if you give a quality side like Australia a sniff, like we did, sometimes with the ball, the bat, and in the field, if you drop someone like Mitchell Marsh in form, we might not have been chasing 317 that day. So do you think it was another case of basics letting Pakistan down?
I think so, and you certainly can't criticize their fight and their determination because to come back from what was quite a heavy defeat in the first test.
Yeah, hammering.
Yeah, it was a hammering, like you said, but I certainly think that they played a lot better and almost matched Australia. Like you said, apart from the small details, which are the basics at the end of the day, giving away extras. You see it all the time in junior cricket. It's not something you expect from an international side.
Most international sides, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you're looking at the missed chances, and at the end of the day, you can everyone drops catches, but it's in the key moments where the game's on the line, when Mitchell Marsh is on 20 odd and Australia are really in trouble at what I think they were leading by about 50, maybe maybe a few more, 70 odd. 4 down. You take that catch, you're probably chasing maximum around 200.
Fair enough.
I think
Mohammed Hafiz, he kind of echoed that in his post-match press conference. He said, "We played better cricket as a team. I'm proud of that. The way the team had the courage to attack this game was the best possible way. If I sum up the game, this is the main bit, the Pakistan team played better than the other team in general. So not better than Australia, better than the other team, apparently. Our batting intent was better. Yeah. And while bowling, we hit the right areas." He also spoke about the mistakes. Yes, we made some mistakes that cost us the game. But as a team, I believe that there were a lot of positives, enough to win the game. But unfortunately, at the end, we didn't, which is pretty much true. Because it's those small bits that get you, right? It's the bit at the edge of the line, which Australia this year, more than ever, have proved that when it comes down to it, they've got the clutch moments.
Absolutely. He mentioned the small key moments, and there's a lot of positives for Pakistan.
Yeah, of course.
But when the game's on the line and someone is needing to take it by the scruff of the neck and produce a match-winning moment, you need to be able to take that. And like you said, Australia just so ruthless, and like I said, so many positives for Pakistan. When was the last time you saw an Australian Test team at home in that much trouble? It's been a while.
India, 2018, something like that. Quite a while ago.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Obviously, they lost to India in 2021, but it was relatively close. And since then, you think of how dominant Australia have been, whether it be in Ashes series or against South Africa last year. They've not really been troubled at home. So there's certainly a lot of positives there. It's just refining the smaller details.
I think Captain Pat also agrees. When he saw the Hafiz thing, he just went, "Oh, cool. They played well, but I'm glad we got the win. It doesn't really matter, does it? It's the team who wins at the end." So that's pretty much it. It doesn't matter how much better you think you've played, but at the end of the day, if you get those moments right, as Australia quite often do, you end up finishing the year with a Test Championship, a World Cup, retaining the Ashes, and smacking Pakistan at home.
Look, it's quite fitting coming from him, isn't it? He's a wonderful bowler. He showed it again in this game with figures of 10 for 97, I think, in the match.
Yeah.
Which is, changed the game in both innings. I think Pakistan were 120 odd for 1 in the first innings. He pinches a couple of wickets, turns the tide in Australia's favour. And just when the game seemed to be slipping away from Australia, he gets the wicket of Rizwan. And then the collapse just unfolds. Like you said, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you get there. As long as you do well enough to get across the line, then you can't have too many complaints.
Talking about the Aussie skipper, I think he's only the second Aussie captain after Alan Border in 1989 to get a Test 10 for. Obviously, Patty got 5 in both innings, and he's also got 250 Test wickets, which now means he's in the top 10 all-time Test wicket takers for Australia. And talking about strike rates, like we were earlier, he's 4th on that list. So only 3 away from Rabada, which is still insane. And surely, 20 years down the line, 2023 will be remembered as Pat's year?
Oh, absolutely. You just look, he's created quite the legacy for himself already. I mean, I think he made his debut in 2011 at the Wanderers against South Africa and looked really, really, really good. And he had a couple of injuries and that kind of set him back. And the way he's come back from that, he's just been a fantastic, fantastic player and consistent performer over the last few years.
Not even
and none more so than this year with the World Test Championship and the World Cup.
Yeah, I think not even as a player anymore. It's just as a captain, you got a bit of slack at the Ashes when some of the baseball went against him, which as it can sometimes. But now that he's won a World Test Championship, an ODI World Cup against basically all the odds in India, and he's got a huge IPL contract for himself, surely that's the doubt has gone, right?
Oh, without a doubt. I think he's cemented himself as one of Australia's greatest ever captains. The amount of time he's had, I think it's about 2 years now that he's been in the job. And the amount he's already accomplished, an Ashes win in Australia, which is the expectation, an Ashes draw away from home, beating South Africa absolutely comprehensively.
He won in Pakistan as well on roads, basically.
And in Sri Lanka as well. And you just think
you got a draw there, which is massive nowadays.
You just he's a fantastic captain and cricketer.
Yeah, and talking about another Aussie hero, apparently most of Australia doesn't hate Mitchell Marsh anymore. He's got 3 out of 4 50s already in this series, and ever since his return in the Ashes at Headingley, he's just like batted his own way and basically belted everything all over the place and got some big runs for Australia in all formats now.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the belting, him belting it around the ground. There are certain players that you don't want to drop, and this goes back to the key moments.
Yeah.
You drop Khawaja there, you never know. Even if he bats for another hour, he's probably not going to score a huge amount of runs. But Mitchell Marsh or Travis Head, just absolutely devastating.
And Dave Warner in that.
And David Warner, absolutely. They're just people who can take the game away from you, and he's done exactly that. Really, the form he's been in. Well, I mean, I think he certainly deserved to come back in the team, and he's been performing all year long, whether it be the 100 in his comeback innings and the Ashes, all the way through to now. Really, he's just been on an absolute roll, and he's one of those players. When he gets going, you just can't stop him.
Yeah, another weird stat. Talking about one skipper doing well, Shan Masood also got twin 50s in the Test match. I think it was like the first or second time this has ever happened in cricket history. And Shan Masood's obviously the first captain since Imran Khan in 1983 to get 250s in a Test versus Australia. And I overall think he did all right in this Test match as a skipper, attacked the bowling, and did all right to get his bowlers bowling like good areas. So what do you think? How do you think he's done so far?
Look, I think obviously you look at his Test record, an average of 29 is not
great,
not ideal. But he's come in, and to his credit, he's captained very well. He's made a lot of good calls. Obviously, at times it's been out of his control with fielding mistakes and whatnot. But you can't really knock it. He scored, I think, almost 200 runs in the series. He's been Pakistan's best batsman by quite some distance, really, in this series.
Do you think, talking about his batting, do you think he should open and Abdullah Shafiq, who's got almost a perfect technique for a number 3, should be at 3? Do you think they should swap?
Well, we saw Shan Masood as an opener in the first kind of his first stint in Test cricket. And obviously we remember that 100 in England that he got, which was an excellent knock. I think it was testing conditions.
Put it that way, yeah. A proper Elgar knock, the old Elgar.
Yeah, absolutely. But look, at the end of the day, it's certainly an option that Pakistan will look at, I'm sure, given that Shafiq's form has just dropped off ever so slightly, or quite a bit actually recently.
Yeah, still an excellent player, but maybe it would suit him. Who knows? Yeah.
And Shah Massoud's, I think, he's really stepped up to the plate, and I don't think it'll really matter where he bats. He's just in a good headspace at the moment, and he's provided he's doing everything right pretty much.
Obviously, there was a lot of clamour about how Pakistan's bowlers are not bowling at 140 like they normally do. Although in this Test match they did bowl pretty well. Do you think the extra pace of Haris Rauf would have helped if he'd chosen to play his MCG cricket for Pakistan instead of the Melbourne Stars?
Well, look, you look at the history of cricket. Pace, out and out pace, doesn't guarantee you wickets.
Of course not.
By a shadow of a doubt, because if you can't put it in the right place consistently enough, you're gonna get.
That was my one doubt, because I was thinking the way that Head, Warner, and Marsh just dig into anything slightly offline. If Haris Rauf, who's not known particularly for his line and length, if they get a hold of him, as you saw at the World Cup, I think he scored the second most, or went for the most runs of the World Cup. And if he was a batsman, he'd be like the second or third most runs scored at the World Cup. So I think particularly Haris Rauf wouldn't have helped them specifically, but they just needed to bowl more good areas like they did this Test match. They got 20 wickets finally. And another bloke who bowled great areas was Josh Hazlewood. Bowled 3 maidens in a row on that little 6-metre box just outside off stump before he cleaned up Babar Azam.
Well, again, it's just like, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but just Australia just have a knack of producing these bowlers. I mean, it would be a crime to compare him to McGrath, but you do see similarities there. I mean, he's just so consistent. He doesn't get the praise of a Stark or a Cummins, but he's always there and thereabouts. He'll always pick up 2 or 3 wickets per innings. And yeah, he's
quality. Yeah,
he just builds pressure so quickly, and you know that. And although he doesn't always take the wickets, you know that he's going to keep one end tidy, and you'll probably get chances from the other because of it.
Pressure counts for so much, even in today's like modern day and age. Hitting your zones counts for loads. But talking about the guy you got out, Babar Azam, his record in Australia is questionable. 335 runs at an average of 25. One of them he got 100 and the other 96 in 13 innings. And it's not just Australia. This year he's had a pretty bad year in Test cricket. He's got 204 runs at an average of 22 in 9 innings. And through this Test match at least, he got bowled through the gate twice, similar dismissals. Do you think it's a case of just a lack of form and, what they say, form temporary, class permanent, and the good times will come back? Or do you think there's a bit of a wider issue here?
Obviously, when a player of such quality goes through a bit of a rough patch, we saw this with Kohli. He didn't score 100 for 3 years, but still averaged mid-40s. I do think this is just temporary. I can't. He's got such a good technique, such a good all-round game. I don't think there's a lot to worry about there. He's just had a lot on his plate with all the captains losing the captaincy, giving away the captaincy.
Being forced to give away the captaincy.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not going down that.
We're not too sure what's happened there, but
no one ever is. Let's be honest.
I think every player, even the best of the best, have quiet patches, and he'll get through it.
I just think his technique he's one of the better batsmen going around technically. I think at some point he'll find his touch, and it'll all be lovely to watch him score hundreds instead of 25s. But another person who hasn't been in the best form, Imam ul Haq, who really when he came back into Test cricket, he scored a load of runs in Pakistan where he averages 62. But in Australia, he averages 16. England, he averages 18. And South Africa, he averages 24. Is there a real selection risk there with away Test matches in particular?
I think he has shown promise in Test cricket, but I have to say his not only his form but his record isn't the best either. And I feel like he's a brilliant white ball player. But I feel like he's certainly struggled in the last little while in Test cricket.
Do you know how old he is?
I think
They can guess.
Late 20s.
Yeah, him and Aidan Markram were World Cup under-19 final captains back in 2012 or something.
Wow. Okay.
So there's a shout. But on the bright side for Pakistan, their bowling took 20 wickets in Australia for the first time since January 2010 in Sydney. And the Pacers got 19 out of 20 wickets for Pakistan in a test match in almost 27 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to really quantify Pakistan.
Mate, it's impossible almost.
They never seem to be able to put a perfect game together.
It doesn't exist.
It doesn't. They're very good. Obviously, look, Shaheen has not been at his best since his injury.
He's been a bit off with pace,
But I think Pakistan have the potential to be a very, very, very potent test team when they've got all their options in contention. Obviously, you look at Naseem Shah, already the injuries they've had in this series. I think Karam Shahzad, who I was quite impressed with.
You looked all right, yeah. I think what it was coming into this series, I was expecting a lot more of what happened in the first test where Pakistan weren't at full strength with bowling. And, in Australia, if you haven't got a fully fit bowling attack, you are not going to win test matches because you can't outscore Australia at home. They'll just score more runs than you no matter what sort of pitch you're playing on. And seeing the slowish sort of medium pace bowling and Shaheen not being at his best, I was expecting a lot more of the first test where the ball got whacked everywhere and they didn't get any wickets. But fair play to them. They came to Melbourne, hit their straps, bowled good areas with length. Mir Hamza did pretty well. Ahmed Jamal kept his form up. Shaheen did better. And Hassan Ali came back and, although he didn't get many wickets, just bowled excellent areas. And it really does show if you do put in good areas, you've got a chance. But another selection dilemma, which was for some reason a dilemma, Mohammad Rizwan. Surely, there's an argument for him being Pakistan's best ever wicketkeeper batsman as an all-round keeper batter, but how on earth was Sarfaraz playing over him in the first test?
I think, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't know from memory. I believe Rizwan has struggled a little bit in Test cricket recently.
Yeah, there was a bit at home where he didn't score many runs last year, and Sarfaraz was getting quite a few in domestic cricket. Yeah. But I think away from home, a player like Rizwan, who really suits the Australian and South African and all these bouncy wickets, because he's got a really good short ball game, more than the other players, and a lot more than Sarfaraz at least. Sarfaraz, he can get runs in places like Karachi and Lahore where doesn't bounce loads and there's a lot of spin. He's an excellent player of spin. But surely away from home, you've got to play your best keeper and your best batter, who will take. I think he took an outstanding grab in this game as well. It might have been Alex Carey in the first innings where the inside edge and he took it one-handed. But yeah, did you also see Rizwan's dismissal in that second innings?
The second innings, yeah. Well, that's kind of what started the collapse. But I mean, he certainly wasn't happy with it.
No, I don't understand why. There was basically this photo where, so obviously we all saw it. It clearly hit his wristband on his glove, right? And that's attached to your glove, which is attached to your bat, which is out. But then he kind of pointed to his arm, which had like a white mark on it. And he's like, "This hit me here." But then I found the photo earlier where it showed that he had the same mark when he was walking in. So either he was blatantly lying, or he just didn't realize. But I don't know why people were complaining, especially, I don't want to go back to Hafiz again, but he's basically complaining about technology again. I really hope someone explains to him, but he said, technology, I'm in favor only if it's giving you benefit. If it's bringing doubts and curse onto the game, he called it a curse, it should not be accepted by anyone. Sometimes the technology brings decisions which obviously as a human we can't understand. The ball is hitting the stumps, it is always out. Why is it umpire's call? I can never understand that. So I think there are a lot of areas that need to be addressed for the betterment of cricket in general. I think technology is something that is taking away from the instinct of the game. So he went full Mikel Arteta VAR style and just started complaining. But is there much to his words, or is it just white noise?
Look, at the end of the day, I think there's always a grey area. Look at it in football with VAR and all, and rugby even in the TMO system. But there's nothing really controversial about that dismissal or anything.
Yeah.
And with going back to the bit you touched on about umpire's call, the reason they use it is
a lot of people don't
their system is not 100% accurate. That's not
exactly.
how it works. There's always this an element of doubt. So they go with if they're not. That's the whole point of umpire's call. They'll stick with. They'll trust the umpire's decision when it's a little bit more 50-50 call.
Yeah, because obviously when the ball hits the pad, there's no exact moment where the ball hits the pad because the pad like crumples. Yeah. So the ball could have moved, or the pad could have moved by that much by the time you decide where it's hit the pad. And that can make, obviously that makes a big difference with DRS. So that's why umpire's call exists. Yeah. But enough of Test cricket. Other international news. Sandeep Lamichhane, who was once the shining star of associate cricket, has been found guilty of rape from the Kathmandu district court. And it's a real shame because he really was the shining light and showing everything on associate cricket and what can come out of associate cricket. But see someone like this it's not exactly great, is it? But onto another Asian leggy, Hasaranga. He's now the new T20 skipper for Sri Lanka. And Kusal Mendes is a new ODI skipper ahead of their series against Zimbabwe in January. Charith Asalanka is vice captain for both sides, which kind of hopefully means a small stable period for Sri Lanka, possibly, if that's possible.
Well, I mean, you look at Sri Lanka and the West Indies, very turbulent times in their cricket.
As always.
Yeah, hopefully this is a new beginning. I mean, Hasaranga is obviously a quality spinner. Not seen a lot of his leadership skills or anything, but he certainly, they're exploring something else which you can't really go against after what's happened recently. But yeah, I think they just need. I think they made the right move. They just need a fresh start and try to get some consistency and just be able to bring through their talent, because they do have quite a big amount of talent in their domestic system. So
hopefully that goes well. But there's another white ball superstar, Asian white ball superstar. Afghanistan played the UAE. They beat them by 72 runs pretty comfortably in Sharjah. Rahmanullah Gurbaz got his maiden international T20 100 from 52 balls, as expected. And now he's just a third Afghan to get an international T20 ton. And it got me thinking, Afghanistan have always had really good spinners, but there have been times where their batting has just let them down. They've just never had enough runs to work with. Do you think Gurbaz and Ibrahim Zadran are the key to like Afghanistan progressing from a spoiler team to genuine hard hitters at the top level, as we saw at some points during the World Cup when their batting performed?
Well, I mean, certainly they play a massive role in terms of giving Afghanistan a good start, and we saw that quite a few times at the World Cup, actually. Like you mentioned, I think it's undeniable. They're both fantastic players, and they're both very young as well. So, or relatively young, anyways. I think they're certainly going to be around for a while in terms of Afghanistan cricket, and Afghanistan have got themselves a very good pair of opening batsmen.
Yeah, Jonathan Trott did say in an interview, I think it was for Wisden earlier, where he's like, if you put Ibrahim Zadran together and Rahmanullah Gurbaz, you get Virat Kohli. So, I mean, it's pretty good, right? If you can get a bit of each out of, you could get a bit of Zadran from Gurbaz and a bit of Gurbaz from Zadran, then you'll be doing all right. But on some franchise stuff, there's really only one league going on right now, the Big Bash. You've been watching it much?
Well, I've been watching some of it, but mostly catching highlights.
Same here.
And look, I think there's. I mean, you want to go ahead and tell everyone the standings?
I will, yeah, but I think the good thing about the Big Bash is it actually starts at 8:15 English time. So if I wake up early enough, I can catch a bit of it, or most of it at least. So we'll go through the standings here. The Brisbane Heat are top. 5 matches, 4 wins. They haven't lost a game yet. One of them was no result. They're on 9 points. Perth Scorchers second with Sydney Sixers, both on 7. Then the Melbourne Stars fourth with 4 points. And then 3 separate teams all on 3. Adelaide Strikers, Sydney Thunder, and Melbourne Renegades. And the Hobart Hurricanes down at the bottom. And there's a very, I can say it now pretty safely, there's a very special player for the Melbourne Renegades, youngster. Do you want to tell him a bit about him?
Well, yeah, I mean, he's been a complete shining light in their campaign so far. I mean, it's Jake Fraser-McGurk. I'm not sure. I don't know if a lot of you would have heard of him, but he's a pretty special player. He recently scored. He beat AB de Villiers' record for the fastest
29 balls, isn't it?
29 balls.
That was a nuts game.
Yeah, which is an unbelievable achievement.
That game was actually pretty crazy in itself because I think they're playing Tasmania on one of those smallish grounds, and they were chasing 400 and something. He comes out, I think it was at 3 or opening, gets his 29 ball ton, ended up getting 130 off 30 odd balls. He got out, and they just collapsed.
Yeah, well, they were coasting along. I think they were 250 after they were on par to chase it down, really. And then they just collapsed.
Not fun chasing 483, is it?
No. Well, it depends where you're playing, but I mean, any time you're chasing 430 or whatever it was,
anything at the high felt helps, I guess.
Well, yeah, that would be nice. Playing at the Allen Border Oval in the high felt, that would be nice. Yeah,
that'd help. But to be fair, as is pretty obvious by now, his strike rate this season has been well above 150, and he's going at I think he's got almost 200 runs now. So he's one person to watch out for. But I'm not sure if his side are actually going to get anywhere close to winning this year because the Renegades are down in 7th. So I'm not sure if they'll even make the knockouts. But who have you got for going all the way to the title this year?
Well, I mean, this is complete bias because AB de Villiers was with them. Look, I think the Heat, Scorchers, and the Sixers are all nailed on for the knockouts. I mean, there's already quite a divide starting to happen in terms of the top 3 and the rest of the
already.
I'm tipping the Heat to go all the way this year. I reckon they're going to bring home the second BBL. What about you?
I don't think so. I just think it's going to be Perth Scorchers again. They do this every single year. I don't know how many they've got now, but they've definitely got the most Big Bashes. And what basically happens every year is, even though they don't storm to the final, they get to the final and then they always somehow manage to win. I don't know what it is, or I don't know what they do right, but they always manage to get over the line. I just think they'll do it again. The Heat have collapsed before in finals and big knockouts, and I just think Scorchers once more going all the way.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. I mean, it's certainly a possibility. They've been one of the form teams so far, and you mentioned their history. They've won the most Big Bashes, and they're one of those teams that just knows how to win. So I can certainly
proper Aussie style, yeah.
Yeah.
And to be fair, even though I think their skipper, who is their skipper?
Hardy, is it?
No, he's a skipper now. Who was that? Ashton Turner. He got injured.
Ashton, yeah.
It was awful. He was bowling and he pivoted while bowling offies or whatever he bowls, and he just done his knee or meniscus or something.
Yeah.
I think despite that, they'll still do all right. But it was a big year for Test cricket, wasn't it, Lucas?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, with
the Ashes
coming into play and the Ashes, I mean, I think there's certainly an argument for saying that Test cricket is dying, but I mean, I think a year like this is... Say again?
It was maybe, but I think now...
Oh, potentially, but, I think that possibly. This has certainly shown us that Test cricket is still alive, and we can
Yeah,
still keep it alive by doing the right things and putting the
of
right
course.
things in place.
So obviously a big year with a lot of big performances. So we're both going to pick two of our best Test performances of the year. Who have you gone for at number one, Lucas?
So I mean, this one's a little bit out there, but I've
Ooh,
gone with
like that.
Ravi Jadeja's 7 for 42 against Australia, with overall match figures of 10 for 110. And this was the 7 for 42 was in the second innings. Match was poised. I think there was only a difference of 2 runs in it, and he came out in classical Ravi Jadeja style, just put on an absolute show and took 7 for in not much time. And I think Australia were bowled out for 113, and then India chased it down very comfortably. So that's my first one. And actually, funnily enough, this could be a little bit of recency bias involved. But
This is the
just
second one, right?
mhm.
So you're going to go two first, and I'll give you my two.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah.
Yeah, should we do that?
What's your second one?
My second one is potentially also a little bit controversial. KL Rahul's 100 in this recent game. I just think obviously Elgar scored 185, and I'll give you the rest of my honourable mentions were Zach Crawley with his 180 yards. Ben Stokes at Lords as well.
I had that as my number one, but I just find it really hard to have. When you don't win the actual Test match, it's a lot harder to get plaudits for it, even though Ben Stokes' innings was unbelievable. But I think because KL Rahul's team got absolutely smacked, makes it a bit harder to remember. But the innings itself was outstanding.
Exactly, and he stood up when everyone around him collapsed. And then actually, one that I was very close to including was Pat Cummins' 10 for in this game.
Yeah, it's a lot of recency bias there, mate.
Well, yes, but he changed the tide in both innings. As captain, it was never going to make it into my my picks, but
which is
I
harsh.
I thought it deserved recognition.
Agreed.
What about yours?
To be fair, obviously Boxing Days are great, with a lot of memorable cricket. But I've already spoken about my Ben Stokes 155 at Lords. Like, I don't need to say much more about that. The way you hit everything outside of his arc, down the hill and whatnot, and everything else that happened in the Test match with the Bairstow stumping and everything. Just a man for the big occasion. But my second one, I'm probably the only one, and a few others who might remember this because I'm weird enough to be awake at 8 a.m. watching this in Sri Lanka. Saud Shakil, 200 in Gaul versus Sri Lanka on a ranked turner. Pakistan were 101 for 5. The next highest score was 86. And Saud Shakil just reverse swept and charged at Prabhat Jayasuriya and what other spinners they have and really got them out of a mess. And I had one honourable mention. Do you remember Harry Brooks 186 in
I do
Wellington?
in New Zealand. Yeah, absolutely.
That was quality. Just the way he high elbowed Daryl Mitchell over his head every 3 balls. And he just started scooping and I was like, this is good. Yeah, it was worth not sleeping that day.
So proper innings.
It was
a very promising young player as well.
Do you want to go on to? Obviously, I haven't got a Test team of the year because I just can't make that sort of stuff with all the.
I haven't.
Luckily, ESPN Cricket Info has done it for us. Let me know what you think. Opening, Usman Khwaja, which makes sense. He got 1,168 Test runs at an average of 55. The second opener is actually someone who bats at number 5, Travis Head, 902 runs at 45. Number 3, Kane Williamson, 700 runs at 57. Joe Root, 787 runs at 65. Harry Brook, 701 runs at 53. Can you guess who the wicketkeeper might be?
Well, I think I saw it earlier. I think it's Tom Blundell, if I'm not mistaken.
It is. He had an excellent year, 433 runs. Although his average wasn't great, he had a couple of big hundreds. One at Lords and I think one at Mount Maunganui right at the beginning of the year. Ravi Jadeja at 7. Ashwin, who's got 40 wickets at 16. Pat Cummins, obviously, 32 wickets at 33. And he's the captain. Mitchell Starc, 34 wickets at 29. and Stuart Broad snuck in with his final year in Test cricket, 38 wickets at 26. Any surprises? Anything you change?
Not particularly. I mean, it's dominated quite heavily by England, Australia, and India, which isn't particularly surprising.
Actually, that's all there is. There's nothing else outside of
And
those.
Kiwi. There's a one.
Yeah,
Kiwi.
there's one Kiwi. That's the only one.
Which is always going to be the case because they play a huge amount more than everyone else. Look, I don't think you can really argue with it because no one else has really played enough. Even if they've done well, in that in the games they've played, they've not shown it enough because
they've not played enough games to prove the numbers really.
Yeah.
And on that, do you want to go with your Test Player of the Year first? I think you might have the same one.
I mean, I think to be perfectly honest, there's not a huge amount of candidates for this. I feel like there's been a lot of big performances, but not a lot of standout overall years for players.
Agreed.
And the person I've picked is Usman Khawaja.
Yeah, I went the exact same.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, he's just been unbelievable since he's been brought back into the team. Like you said, 1,210 runs, I think, at 55, 300s, 650s, World Test Championship winner to boot as well.
Yeah. All over the world hundreds, away hundreds, home hundreds. Just before he was, a lot of his runs were attributed to like home track bullying, like Warner did for quite a while. But I think away hundreds in Pakistan and I think he got one in India as well, and he got one in England.
Yeah.
Can't really doubt it. I think that was pretty easy there.
No, I mean, to be honest, the only other potential candidate I had was Pat Cummins.
I had Travis Head as another candidate.
Travis Head, yeah. Well, all Australia.
Yeah. I mean, they did win the championship and regaining Ashes, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, retaining Ashes. But another big year for Australian ODI cricket, and there was a World Cup. There's really only one right answer for ODI Performance of the Year.
Yeah.
Glenn Maxwell.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any other honourable mentions?
Well, I mean, the two choices I picked was Glenn Maxwell and Shami's 7 for 57 in the semi-final.
I had another couple hundreds in there.
And then the honourable mentions are all batsmen. Clarkson, 174 and 83 against Australia.
I almost forgot about that.
And
that was an excellent knock.
Yeah, Shubman Gill is 200 against New Zealand.
Yeah,
and then finally, my last honourable mention was David Miller in the World Cup semi-final.
That was an excellent
tough pitch. He made it look like it was a road. No one else scored any notable runs on it apart from Travis Head, I think, who was in the form of his life.
Yeah.
And the situation as well, South Africa 20 for 4. I just think, it certainly deserves to be in the honourable mentions list.
There was a shout. I think, first of all, that Clarkson game, do you remember, I think halfway through the innings, they were on 180 and they ended up making 430.
Yeah.
They almost made 200 and something odd in the last 25 overs of the game. Clarkson, I think he hit Adam Zampa for 110. Well, Adam Zampa got hit for 110. And literally every ball, no matter where it pitched, Clarkson just whacked it miles. I think it was at Joburg, was it?
Centurion, Pretoria. Yeah.
Was it Pretoria? Everything.
Yeah. I think,
Pretoria is a weird ground, because in test matches, batsmen are terrified. But as soon as you switch to a white ball, the ball just goes everywhere.
It just goes flying. I mean, we'll get on to the T20 stuff in a little bit, but there's been a lot of high scores this year in South Africa.
There has always. Yeah. Obviously, my ODI performance of the year was undoubtedly Maxwell's 201. Forget out performance of the year, performance of the decade, performance of the century. It's probably the best ODI innings I've ever seen.
Yeah, there's not much competition for it.
Not at least in the last 20 years. I'm thinking stuff like that doesn't happen. It was a double hundred.
Double hundred in a run check. He scored more than 2/3 of their runs. I mean, that just says it all, really. I mean,
I can't actually begin to talk about that. I'll be here all night. But my obviously honourable mentions: Travis Head's 100 in the final. That's pretty special.
Yeah, I was thinking of that. But
the way he attacked India's spinners, especially Kuldeep, that was pretty good. And another one, which I'm very biased on, but Fakhar Zaman's 100. In that game where they technically chased 400, but not really. The rain helped. So I think that mention really goes to Fakhar Zaman plus the rain. Good performance all round from those two.
It's a pretty serious knock.
Yeah, the rain's a good player. As you'd know as a South African.
Yeah, well, a few too many of those experiences.
Yeah, we'll move on quickly from that. The ODI team of the year, Cricinfo helping us out again. Very India dominated, as you'd imagine. Top 3, Sharma, Gill, Kohli. Here are some of these averages. Sharma, 1,200 runs at 52. Gill, 1,500 runs at 63. Kohli, 1,300 runs at 72. Pretty nuts. Travis Head at number 4, 570 runs at 51. I've got another Kiwi, 2 teams back to back. Darrell Mitchell, 1,200 at 52.
No
Klaasen, your man Klaasen, just under 1,000 runs, 927 at 46. Also got 12 catchings, 1 stumping.
Look at his strike rate. I think it's 140, mid 140s.
And another man with him, who in this team would be batting with him, and in real life did as well, Marco Jansen, 400 runs at 33, which is pretty solid for a number 7 or 6, wherever he bats nowadays. And 33 wickets at averaging 29.9.
Yeah.
And then the bowling attack, as you'd imagine, is also India dominated. Shami, Bumrah, and Kuldeep, and the other spinners Adam Zampa.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's much debate for that.
No, not really.
I mean,
see why there's not many Aussies, even though they won the World Cup. They didn't really have a standout year in ODIs. No. They just, as Australia normally do, turn up when it matters.
I feel like it's very harsh leaving Glenn Maxwell out, potentially.
Yeah, he had an excellent year. But I think World Cup bias like there is in the IPL is pretty helpful.
Yeah, exactly.
As always, yeah.
What about your ODI player of the year then, moving on?
My ODI player of the year? Yeah. Well, it's pretty easy, right? Kohli. We both gone that
I think we've gone for the
yeah. I don't think we need
no real shot there.
Nah. He could probably have been ODI player of the year for like the past 8 out of 12 years or 8 out of 11 years. He's just been that consistent. I honestly think
he's just unbelievable.
Yeah. There's not much to say about him. Like even that, that test match that happened just now in the last innings where he got like 60 on. He played one shot where he played a flick shot, but he didn't actually break his wrists. He just left his bat there and he absolutely creamed it. And it went one bounce into the fence where everyone else is like hopping around and like Jaiswal's getting balls around his throat. You just see Kohli like charging at Jansen and Berger and you're like, yeah, he's pretty good, isn't he?
This ain't shit. Oh, sorry. This ain't anything really.
This ain't fair. But oh well.
But yeah, I mean, to be honest, I had one honourable mention, and that was Maxwell.
Fair play.
413 runs at 51.6, strike rate of 146.
I went for him more in my T20s than ODI, but
really,
white ball he was pretty good, as always.
I mean, even he got 10 wickets at 37, which isn't amazing. And then you think about fastest World Cup 100, a World Cup double 100, and a World Cup winner. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good year.
Pretty solid.
But yeah.
The other T20 or the other white ball format, T20s. What do you have as your performance of the year?
Right. So I've gone with Johnson Charles. 118 of 46 balls.
And they still lost.
And I think we probably this game just deserves a whole section for itself.
Yeah, you can do that in a while, I'd imagine. But I actually went for Phil Salt, his first 100, not the second one. The first one though, they were chasing 227. I thought that was pretty good. England are having a horrible tour so far. They'd only won one of the 4 games, lost 2 ODIs, lost both their T20s.
Yeah.
And like the Windies had their full squad back. It was looking like quite a tough drubbing with Russell and Holder and Shai Hope in form, and they're looking pretty stiff as they were chasing 227. But
yeah,
Phil Salt,
he's always outstanding knock. It's in my honourable mentions. And then I've gone for a really, really rogue one as my second one.
Go on.
So at some point this year, Malaysia were playing China.
Oh my god!
A bloke called, I'm sorry if I mess this up horrifically, Size Rule Idris bowled 4 overs, 1 maiden, 7 for 8.
You can have the award right now, mate. 7 for 8.
Which is, yeah, I mean, that in 4 overs. So
Do you know what that reminds me of? You know, in junior cricket, when you have like the one kid who plays for county and he's like clearly like 20 miles per hour quicker than everyone else.
Yeah.
And all these other kids don't actually like cricket, but their parents
And
force them to play.
Yeah.
And they're backing away and they're basically standing on the square leg umpire's toes. And this kid's just like destroyed the stumps.
Yeah. No,
Can't say I've watched Malaysia regularly, but sounds like a decent spell.
I certainly didn't tune in for that one, but I mean, I thought it deserved to be mentioned.
Yeah, imagine him going back to work the next day saying, "Yeah, lads, I've got a cheeky 7 for
back on the farm, back on the Malaysian farm, whatever."
Yeah, or back to whatever work he does. Good luck with that, mate. I'm not sure many of his work colleagues know what a 7 for is, but we do at least.
Yeah, he'll get the attention. He'll get our attention, or
yeah, but he didn't get the attention of Quick Info. I'll tell you that he's not in the team of the year. This Malaysian guy. I'll tell you who is though. Guess what? Another 2 Indian openers, Jaiswal and Gill.
Wow. Okay.
Jaiswal got 1,300 runs. Guess the strike rates because that's what really matters. 158.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Gill got 1,200 runs as well at 154. And there's a South African in here who's captaining. Who do you think that is?
It's got to be Markram, doesn't it?
It's Faf. Duplessis.
It's Faf.
I think he's for franchise stuff as well, but apparently he's got 1,200 runs at a strike rate of 150. I don't know where he scored these runs. It must have been MLC or something.
And RCB.
Yeah, that's probably it. Did he have a good year for them?
Yeah. He had a good year.
Where else does he play? T20, obviously.
Yeah. Did he play in the 100 this year? I can't remember.
I think he might have for the
Superchargers.
The Northern Superchargers. That's it. I need to call them Super Giants. I've got everything messed up. There's just so many teams now.
Don't want to get copyrighted.
Yeah, the main man, Glenn Maxwell's here now at 4. 787 runs, a striker of 174. He also got 14 wickets, an economy. Oh, forget the economy. Economy is expensive, but he did all right, 31. Next is, the main T20 player for the last couple of years, Sky. 1,300 runs at an average of, not the average, a striker is 166. So he got the most runs.
No surprise there.
Got the most runs this year, and he's got the highest strike rate after Glenn Maxwell. It's not bad, is it?
No, pretty, quite a useful player to have in your team.
Yeah, another hard hitter, Klaassen next, and then this one, which you've probably never had a Zimbabwean player in there before, but Sikandar Raza. He's been exceptional this year, hasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I won't. Absolutely. He's been a fantastic player for quite a while now, and he's getting recognition, which is nice to see.
He's the first Zimbabwean player to be a proper IPL level, because they've got other good players like Musrabani and Ngarava, but he's the first one to be proper international franchise, serious franchise level player.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you're playing in the IPL, you're no dud. He's got 1,000 runs, strike rate of 50, 35 wickets as well, an average of 21, which is pretty sound.
Yeah, absolutely.
Daniel Sams is in here. Have you been watching much of him?
Well, I saw he's the leading wicket taker in BBL this season.
He's had an excellent year.
That's a little bit of a surprise, to be honest.
Yeah, Daniel Sams, and then Rashid Khan, obviously, as he is every year. Just
no surprise.
Yeah. Shaheen Afridi, who I'm not sure much recently, but at the beginning of the year he did quite well in the PSL. Got back-to-back championships as captain for Lahore, who basically were awful before that. They're like the RCB of PSL, where they had all the players but couldn't win anything.
Never win it, yeah.
The owner changed and they made Shaheen captain, and now he's done the goods. And then finishing off with Nathan Ellis, who's now captain for Hobart Hurricanes.
Yeah,
pretty good.
He's been quite a consistent white ball bowler in the last couple of years. So, not a huge deal of surprise there. But what about your player of the year? T20 player of the year.
T20 player of the year.
Yeah.
Sky. 1,300 runs at a strike rate of what? 166, 200s as well. So can't look past that.
Well, actually, the person you said you were surprised. Well, not surprised, but wow, yeah, you a little bit surprised to see in the team was Sikandar Raza, and he's my
You
player
went
of
for
the
him?
year. He's my player of the year. I just
Yes.
Sky is my honourable mention, and I'm sure I'm going to get lots of annoyed
Nah.
people.
It's all right. I can see why you went to Kandaraza.
Look, just not one of those players who really just deserves to play at the highest level possible. Like, you know, he'd get into most international teams, I reckon.
Yeah, he's carrying Zimbabwe seriously. They haven't qualified, you know, for the T20 World Cup.
No. I mean, internationally, I know you read out some of his stats overall, but so internationally, he scored 515 runs at 51.5 with a strike rate of 150.
That's not bad.
With six 50s, and then with the ball, 17 wickets at 14, with an economy of 6.5.
Jeez, I think you might have won that one.
So,
but another, talking about Aussies, or not Aussies, but anyways, Glenn Maxwell. That was my moment of the year. Maxwell's 100. I'll tell you why. I've gone into my lecture or whatever. I've been told to write a piece about whatever I've won. I've decided I hate the spirit of cricket. I'm going to write about how it shouldn't exist. Just about to like put my So obviously I've got two tabs open. One Word document, one Maxwell's innings or the Australia game. It's petering out. Just about to turn it off, and I haven't written a word on the Word document yet. Maxwell hits a 6, and I'm like, ooh. I watch another over. Hits another 3, and I'm like, actually. And then I'm just shouting at my screen like a lunatic for the next 2 hours as every ball goes into a stand. Maxwell does like the floppy fish as he's like fully cramping up. No one can understand what's going on because neither can I. I haven't written a single word on the Word document. And as soon as the lesson ends or the lecture ends, the game's over. I've just gone, how on earth's that happened? I've shut it down and I've just left. And I did eventually get the spirit of cricket nonsense written when I got home. But yeah, that was my moment of the year. It was just something you really lucky if you watch that live in the ground or even on TV. Just going through it all, the emotions is just pretty crazy. That
like you said, one of just that innings is going to be around forever. Really, I mean, you know, it's just a fantastic performance and one that you never expect to happen. Like, and you got to remember as well, it's not just the fact that he kept hitting every ball into the stands while standing on one foot. They would have their position in the semis was under real scrutiny, and they had to win that really.
Fair enough.
And you know, he's just completely pulled them out the mud once again, really. So yeah, fantastic.
What did you say about you were going to revisit another game earlier?
Oh yeah, well I was that is my moment of the year, which is the South Africa West Indies T20 at Centurion, where South Africa successfully chased 250 odd.
Standard,
which is, you know,
that's all right.
You just don't see that really.
Didn't the clock get 100 a flight? Not many.
100 of 44. I think South Africa, they had the highest power play score of any. Actually, it might have been out of any team. It was definitely out of any full member nations. But I think there were 111 after the power play for none.
Yeah. I'm surprised you didn't go for Nepal's 340 versus China or whatever it was. Mongolia. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, there was another one which was. It could have been that game. Some bloke scored 50 off 9 balls.
Yeah, that was it. He basically hit all the balls to 6.
Yeah. He hit 8 sixes and 10 balls or something.
Do you know what the best part was? Your T20 performance of the year was in that moment of the year game, but it was from the losing side where Johnson Charles got that ton.
Yeah, well, I mean,
who else got runs for South Africa though? The clock obviously.
I think Reza Hendricks scored 60 odd, 68.
He didn't get any. Markram
and Klaasman were not out on about 30 odd each.
Oh, fair enough.
So yeah, the runs were fairly shared apart from de Kock. But yeah, I mean, look, there's been a lot of standout performances and standout games and moments this year, but I just thought,
First.
and you've gone for the Maxwell innings, which is just incredible, and I just feel like that's probably the closest thing in terms of never seeing it again, really.
Yeah, that's why I went for it. I'd feel bad if I left it out.
Yeah.
But obviously, there was a lot of good performances, but from some new players as well. So for your breakthrough player of the year, who have you chosen?
So I've gone for Gerald Coetzee. I don't think
why.
Look, 47 wickets in your at 23 and a half in your debut year in international cricket is pretty special.
Yeah.
Fantastic World Cup. In 8 games, he picked up 20 wickets at just under 20. Just a fantastic year for him. Didn't finish off the way he would have wanted, getting injured and not bowling quite to his best ability in the test against India, but certainly a good year for him.
I went for Gerald Coetzee as well, and like my honourable mention. Obviously, I went for Coetzee for the reasons you said. First year in international cricket, he was pretty good all year round. But my honourable mention went to. It doesn't actually sound like a breakthrough year because it didn't break through specifically this year. He's been around for a while with Shubman Gill, but I think this year was a specific year where he went from like promising talent to world-class batsman. I think it's where he made the jump to where everyone's like, yeah, he's not just promising talent now. He's one of the best batters in the world consistently with all white ball formats. And he did all right at the beginning of the year against Australia with the red ball, but obviously he's fallen off a bit. But I think he'll be back. He'll have a big year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, my honourable mention is, again, statistically not the best.
Yeah.
But off a fantastic World Cup for him, it's Rachin Ravindra.
Yeah.
He's been around for a couple of years now, and this year he's really, especially in the latter part of 2023, he's really taken off and shown his ability.
I would have had Rachin in there, but I think the only reason I didn't was because he really kicked on in the last few months.
Yeah,
which obviously makes a big difference because it's a World Cup and whatnot. But yeah, he's definitely got big things to come. But talking about world-class batters, but this one hasn't actually done as well as he should have. My biggest drop-off of 2023, Babar Azam. He had a pretty poor World Cup for his standards. He got a couple 50s, but he didn't get any hundreds in his 9 games. He got basically forced to resign from all captaincies because he didn't get Pakistan to an Asia Cup final or a World Cup semi. And his test average, hear this, almost dropped by 2/3. He was averaging 69.64 in 2022 in test matches. And then this year, he's been averaging, or 2023, he's been averaging 22.66.
Yeah, I mean, again, I wouldn't be worried. I think it's just a drop in form and a lot going on in the background in Pakistan cricket.
There's always loads going on. There's only 20% we know about, mate.
Yeah,
we're like 80%, which is like absolute
still under
chaos.
Well undercover.
Look,
I think he'll bounce back next year. I think he should. He's too good not to.
Who do you think had a terrible year compared to the year before?
So I've been actually tossing this up for quite a while.
All right.
There's quite a few Pakistan candidates, unfortunately.
There always is. Because they fluctuate from year to year like crazy.
I thought about going for potentially a Shaheen or an Abdullah Shafiq, but I've actually gone for Imam Ul-Haq.
Yeah, very understandable.
Last year, he averaged 61, 500s in the year, 750s, scored 1,300 runs. And now this year, he's not scored 100. He's averaged mid-30s. And just the drop-off has been quite big.
So we've both gone for Pakistan top-order batsmen. And if that doesn't say enough, I'm not sure what does. But for my next segment, I've picked another Pakistan player, but this time for something good, or at least I think so. Young Player of the Year, I went for Naseem Shah, who doesn't actually feel like a young player anymore. I was thinking around under 23s. He's still 20, which is weird because he's been playing for 4 years now. Yeah. But that's just because he's really fast. And it's weird because this year when Shaheen's been injured, he's been the real spearhead of the Pakistan attack across all formats. Obviously, he was unlucky to get injured before the World Cup, but he's incredibly talented. And as you saw, so in the IPL, obviously there's a Hardik Pandya trade from Gujarat to Mumbai, I think, for loads of money.
Yeah.
Something similar happened in the PSL where Naseem Shah went to Islamabad United, but they gave 2 players in return. And like Naseem Shah is like right now hottest property in Pakistan going around.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think so. I've actually your breakthrough player of the year is my young player of the year because he's still ridiculously young. Or what, 23 now, I think. It's Shubman Gill. I mean the stats there already 2,120
24,
runs.
hasn't he? Yeah.
You know,
he's just turned 24, so yeah, I guess that counts.
Is it just 24 now?
Yeah, but he was 23 for most of this year, I think. So should be right.
Okay, let me off there, please.
Yeah, I'll let you off. If he was that good, I'll let you off.
Look, 2,128 runs at 47, 700s, 1050s. I mean, you've already covered it. So
yeah,
I mean there's much to say about that.
As we near the end, there's obviously a big year coming up. There's going to be, I saw somewhere where like England play 17 Test matches, India play 14 or 15. There's going to be loads of Test matches this year. There's going to be a T20 World Cup. There's going to be a lot of space for some. Excuse me. There'll be a lot of space for some new talent coming through. And my breakthrough shout, I'll tell you the person to look out for this year, Jaiswal, 2024. Yeah. I'll tell you why. I feel like obviously after this World Cup, the Indian top order, there'll be a bit of readjustling or whatever going on. Kohli, as good as he is, he's not getting younger. So they will give chances to Gaikwad and Jaiswal. Same with Rohit. So I think Jaiswal, he's been around for a while, but he's never really broken in. He's had a good IPL last year, but I think this is 2024 is going to be the year. He'll make the big breakthrough and he'll do what Shubman Gill did last year.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a very, very good shout. I mean, look at his starting Test cricket. I know he's not done particularly well in this Test match, but he did get 2 pretty good balls from Berger. He started off fantastically in the West Indies. But yeah, my breakthrough player of the year, or player shout for next year, anyways, is Devon Brevis. And I mean,
I guess
yeah, absolutely. He's taken, despite only being 20. I think he's still 20. He's been around for a little while now, and it's taken him a while to get close to playing for South Africa. And obviously, he made his T20 debut. And then in the first class arena, he scored in this current cycle of it. He scored 404 runs at 45 with 200s and 250s. And then in the One Day Cup, he scored 372 runs at 53 with 200s and 150. So I really think he can kick on in the new year and nail down a place in this South African team, hopefully in the future.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Lucas. It's been even longer than yesterday. Somehow, I don't know how we've managed this. I was speaking with Archie yesterday, and we were like, yesterday's session ended up being a full football match plus the 10 minutes of injury time we have. This game must have had like 3 red cards and 4 penalties because we've got like almost 15 minutes into injury time.
We're into extra time now at this point.
Yeah, if there was extra time, it'd be almost second half of extra time. But yeah, thank you very much, Lucas. Hopefully, I'll probably see you maybe next week or the week after, depending. I'll definitely see the lot of you on Monday next week for the next roundup. No, actually, I'll do that on Tuesday. Next week, I'll have an interview, hopefully, with an England player of some sort on this channel for the Dibbly Dobblers. This is the first episode of Plums and Peaches. Thank you very much. And now that I'm a YouTuber, I have to remember this every single time. Like, share, subscribe. Goodbye.
Thanks so much for having me on. Thank you.
See you later, Lucas.
Take care, mate.